It's 7:16 in the morning on Saturday, August 31st, and 2019 in Sarasota, Florida. And this is definitely, I haven't recorded in over 2 weeks. The minutes are trickling by right now because I have to wait till 8 a.m. to hear back from my vet. One of my little kitties. I am a 43-year-old woman who doesn't have any human kids. I had to have a hysterectomy almost 3 years ago. So at that point and since then, it was 100% certain I wouldn't birth my own children in this life. These cats have absolutely changed my life. I never thought, did not intend to have pets. Let me stop again. I am very much trying to capture the energy of this moment on the linear timeline of this life, all the pieces of what represents my reality right now, and the depth to which I feel these pieces, the extent to which the pieces are all consciously interconnected. And as a practical means of trying to pass time by to 8 o'clock, because the minutes are really trickling, and I need to take one of my kitties in one way, shape, or form to the vet today for a number of reasons. One, clearly something is wrong, and I haven't handled this with her. The other one has diabetes, so I've kind of been through this with him. And I'm panicking in a lot of reasons because I'm jumping to the worst case scenario, and I don't know why I'm doing that. And I'm also feeling animals are tough. I mean, she is definitely, this morning versus last night, I almost feel her saying, do something. And I just want to scream to her, I am, I promise, I am. And this experience is just, for somebody who never had children, I mean, a regular mother of human children, I am certain goes through what I'm experiencing, certainly as a first-time mother with their first kids, but likely anytime their kids are not feeling well, are in pain, or God forbid something more serious. And I am just really trying to focus my energy on the present moment and not get too far ahead of myself. And as I already have a plan. If I'm waiting on my regular vet. They're my regular vet that I see all the time with my diabetic cat. I have a relationship with them. I would like to go there. But if they are not open today because it's Labor Day weekend, and or if for some reason they're not, because sometimes there's not a vet on duty on Saturday, and I don't know like what can be prescribed. I don't know. If they're not able to help me and guarantee that they can help me today, see me and help me with her, then I'm going to go to the emergency clinic down south. To further add to the energy, my ex just biked by, and it's been a really hard week, even though we've been done for 8 months. And he left town, he moved away, and I knew that wouldn't last. I was hoping with all hope, because ever since he's come back to town, just a few weeks ago, I have not been doing all that well in town, just because of how interconnected our energies are. Not any longer in the physical, but in ways way beyond the physical. So having him just bike by, and me happen to look up, and I'm really only on the couch, and I mean, normally I would be doing other things at this time, namely, this is what I've tried to make my meditation period, from like 5 to 6, or 6 to 7, depending on when I get up. We also have a storm that I'm trying to give very little attention to. Right now, I think it's an actual Category 4 storm. You know, the fear associated with that, I'm not really interested in that. And actually, this is the first time I will have been home, which is a lot easier than when I'm traveling, when these storms come, mostly because I imagine the kitty's here alone, and I'm also reluctantly supposed to be training my brother, who happens to live in town, to try to take over a role that I barely had been in at the farm, which is and has been a piece of my life that altered my life and first became part of my life 11 years ago. And earlier this year, I've known I needed to leave it, much like a bad relationship. And I finally put that in writing and gave notification about 5 weeks ago. And I have approximately 3 weeks left there. So, and as with everything in my life, nothing is just what it appears to be on the surface. Not even in any, everything is felt and experienced and has been consciously co-created so deeply, so interconnected. And this is just kind of a lot. And I was out of town for work last weekend when some signs, I think, started to show with Peanut. And so I'm also beating myself up a little bit, especially because I definitely knew something was wrong yesterday. And I don't know why I waited. And if it's not serious, we're catching it. I'm sure we're catching it in plenty of time to address it if it's a parasite issue or a little bug. But if it's something serious, which my pattern has been to worry and jump to the worst case scenario, and a big part of my spiritual awakening has been the awareness of the fact of what that does and how that is not serving. It doesn't help to worry, ever. Yet, I was brought up in a home with a lot of worrying energy, a lot of worrying energy. And as such, that was very foundational in me. And I have a lot more understanding and awareness of that. But clearly, I'm still really, certain situations place me right back in that rut. The storm, I think if I was away from home, I would have more worrying going on, and that's been the pattern the past few years, because this is my busiest travel time, and I am supposed to leave next weekend, or next week, Thursday, which might also be affected by the storm. But I don't feel overly concerned or worried or stressed about that. I'm not as triggered. If I was paying more attention to it, it would feed it, and it wouldn't take much for me to get worried when they show what they show of an entire cone of a hurricane, bigger than the entire peninsula, of Florida, and now in a Cat 4. I mean, if you watch that and you don't think that affects things, you don't understand how physical reality manifests, because it comes from what we give thought to, period. And there's a real balance between, sorry, this was an alarm, like I was going to get any sleep last night, and I never sleep past in this time anyway. There is a fine balance between being prepared and just having something be completely a fear, a cycle of fear, a pattern of fear. It's a business of fear. If you don't think that America has become a business of fear, you're not being real. And so it's just interesting, because I'm not overly concerned about that, but the very real worrying energy that's jumping to the worst case scenario of potentially getting news or losing either one of these kitties is enough So I am trying to honor what I'm feeling in the moment, but really stay in the moment. And focus instead on knowing that I am feeling all this emotion entirely due to the love that I have for Peanut, for my ex that I have to stay away from, for the farm that I have to leave for my survival, for my sake. For my brother, from whom I also had to pull away, and seeing him today would have been the first time in 2 months. And I really didn't want to see him, and I may not, probably will not see him today to train him for the farm role, because I want to be with my cat no matter what happens at the vet. So, again, the biggest impetus to turn on the camera was to just try to pass some minutes by more quickly, because I want to try to see my vet. Again, the emergency vet, I already called them. So I know how, I mean, I have a plan. I'll know here now in just a half hour if my vet 1 is open. Their message didn't say they were closed, but it's a holiday weekend and the storm is coming. So it's definitely a little, the energy out there is kind of crazy, and I'd rather not leave the house at all. But, oh man, and it's really crazy. Again, I finally have taken a little bit of a step in a part of my work, an arm of my work, in terms of beginning to introduce the various storylines that all of these segments of my life, and they are distinct segments where the character I'm playing in each of these segments of my life is so different, and I can't play all these different roles. I need to bring everything together more consciously, and the ultimate hub of that is this awareness and knowing of myself, of something beyond these individual characters. It's very spiritual at its hub, and that's not something, not religious, and it's nothing against religion, but religion, spirituality, those are, that's one of the big 3 categories of being a trigger and being something, a topic that often makes people uncomfortable for one reason or another, or can make people uncomfortable. And it's historically, what do they say? Religion, money, politics. You do not, religion, money, politics. Avoid those three. And we can't avoid things anymore. We're being called, everything has sort of been brought to the surface and is boiling at the surface for us to just face and embrace and to try to evolve from this culture of fear to one of love. But that means facing these fears and being honest with ourselves in pretty deep ways and vulnerable ways and ways that the mainstream world that we're evolving, from which we are evolving, would label as weakness rather than what they really represent, which is tremendous strength and courage. To be vulnerable, to be authentic, to face your fears and your heartache and the sadness and all the things that we label as bad, to face those head on and soften them and recognize that the labels of good and bad are just that. They're human labels. The greater truth of that does not see the world in this separate way that we've created. And part of the conscious evolution going on, part of the energy shifting going on, a real opportunity for people for whom it resonates is present right now in our planet, in our world, in this huge way to, I just say, go higher in the tree. Just go higher. Include more in your perspective, in your view. Loosen definitions, lose categories, lose the separateness. But in that process, it's very delicate because in one sense, it's remembering and knowing that the greater truth with the capital T is that we are all connected. But the separatism in this third dimension, you still have to navigate that because you're interacting with human beings and things and systems that don't believe that greater truth or see that greater truth. And that's okay. It's not labeling anything as better than, but you have to know with what you're negotiating, if you will, when it comes down to having to handle very real world, practical, 3D things. Most notably, relationships, jobs, relationships, and things like jobs and employment. And I know, believe me, I know the tangents that this is going off on right now. Like I said, I just wanted to capture a little bit of the energy here early on, the last day of August in 2019. Had a very big Ironman week in Traverse City, very big, good in my world, which means it's a lot more than just the surface of the race itself, which went really well. I leave again, or I'm supposed to leave again. Both of these gigs were shorter gigs. I'm supposed to leave on Thursday, depending on what happens with this storm. That is definitely being affected, at least minimally. And right now, my immediate concern is, not finishing up at the farm, which is a real thing, not continuing to process the release of a 5.5-year relationship with a man that, watching him go by today after, and I haven't seen him since he got back into town, and I didn't really see him that day, but it's not accidental. I actually had a pretty bad day yesterday with my how heavy my heart felt thinking of him just yesterday. I don't know why it was triggered. It just was. The 8-month anniversary of knowing we were done just passed on Monday, but it's only been a couple months since giving him his money and, you know, refinancing the house so that I could give him a big chunk of the money he had in the house back, all of his money. But it represented practically the entire value of the house. So that was no small thing. That was no small thing in our relationship. And it was no small thing. It was only a little over 2 months ago, so it's still pretty fresh. And I've always been the sole homeowner. His name was never on it. He never really saw it as his. I did because of the huge amount of money he had in it. But when I'm still, you know, I've got breathing room financially, but only a very few understand what my world has been the past decade since going all in financially by a lot of people's standards in an insane way in my dream and manifesting that dream, and how much of that dream has begun to come true in ways that I really can still only celebrate with myself, which is a whole nother dimension of things. To bring it back to the financial part, I have some breathing room, but certainly not a ton when you own an older home. So when a storm comes in, there's a very real mitigation too of, like I said earlier, the worry of it. And now that he's out of it, I'm finding that a lot of my worry was really tied to him because I owed him so much money and already knew the fact that we were tied together through this house was only exacerbating already tense, bad things in the relationship. The reason the relationship lasted as long as it did was because the house was intertwined, my home. He did not live here full time. He never committed to that. He stayed living with his brother for the most part. So, putting that aside, the immediate concern is my little kitty, Peanut. And I am going to end this now and conclude and hope that I will gladly feel foolish and silly for overreacting, because like I said, all this is really doing is allowing me to sort of express love, really, through the cat in this case, but I'm really focused on just believing she's just got a little parasite or something going on with her tummy. I've got no reason to believe that she's 10 years old, so she's not a young kitty, but no reason to believe she's got anything serious. So we're gonna hope that it's not serious, and that we're gonna get her a little bit of medicine in her somehow, some way today, and get her feeling better. And right now it looks like the sun's out, so the storm isn't beginning to hit us yet. I think it's gonna start, whatever we're gonna get is really gonna start tomorrow. So, yeah. We're gonna go to the vet or to the emergency clinic, and we're gonna hope for the best. Thanks.